My name is Jason Ramage, and I'm the Director of Research Compliance for the University of Arkansas. In this presentation, we will discuss how to determine if your project qualifies as human subjects research. If your research does indeed qualify as human subjects research, or HSR, there are additional videos in this series that will help you learn more about the IRB approval process. Let's begin by asking, what is human subjects research? To be considered human subjects research, or HSR, your project must meet two criteria. The first, is this project considered research? Research is defined as a systematic investigation including development, testing, and evaluation, all designed to contribute to generalizable knowledge. If your project doesn't fit that description, then you are not conducting research, and you do not need to go any further. If your project does fit that description, then you'll need to consider the second criterion. Does the project involve human subjects? Are you interacting with or collecting information and/or biological specimens from living human beings? If the answer to both questions is yes, you are conducting human subjects research, and your project is subject to review and approval by the Institutional Review Board, or IRB, regardless of its funding status. Human subjects research is guided by certain principles and federal regulations. The Nuremberg Code was developed following World War II after the Nazis conducted horrendous experiments on people they held captive in their prison camps. The Nuremberg Code was drafted to say to the world research community, we are not going to allow that to happen ever again. The Belmont Report came later in 1976 and further defined and identified ethical practices that should be implemented when conducting human subjects research. The Nuremberg Code and the Belmont Report are complementary to one another. There is some overlap between the two. Volunteer consent under the Nuremberg Code, for instance, ties in with the Belmont Report's principle of autonomy. There should be societal benefits. Risks should be minimized. That corresponds with the principle of beneficence. Then there's the principle of justice. Research should yield societal benefits for as many people as possible. Participants should be drawn from a wide population as possible, unless there is a scientific justification for limiting the participant pool to a specific population. In 1991, a uniform set of rules for the protection of human subjects was adopted and codified at 45 CFR Part 46, Subpart A, known as the Common Rule for short. The Common Rule is the predominant federal regulation governing human subjects research. Subparts B, additional protections for pregnant women, human fetuses, and newborns, C, additional protections for prisoners, and D, additional protections for children, are regulations that supplement Subpart A and provide additional protections for certain vulnerable populations. Investigators conducting research using these populations must comply with all of the requirements of Subpart A, as well as the additional requirements of the subpart. Keep in mind, however, not every project involving people necessarily meets the definition of human subjects research. Let's look at some activities that are not considered research. Journalism and public health surveillance activities. For instance, if there was a flu outbreak and you were helping the local health department do some epidemiological work, that wouldn't be considered human subjects research. If you're collecting data or doing any kind of analysis of information for law enforcement, if you're working with the State Bureau of Investigation or the local police department or the FBI, for instance, those activities are not considered research. And any kind of operational activities supporting Homeland Security or intelligence gathering or other national security missions do not constitute human subjects research. Data collection for administrative purposes. For example, when you ask your students to fill out instructor evaluations at the end of the semester in order to get feedback on how they felt the class went, that's not research. The same goes for information gathering focused on things, products, business policies, class projects, if you're teaching a class on how to conduct research in, say, a methodology class, any activities you're doing within that class are not considered research. Again, the activities in question may involve human subjects, but they do not meet the definition of research, and therefore you do not need IRB approval for them. So, what exactly is the Institutional Review Board? The Institutional Review Board, or IRB, is the committee responsible for oversight of projects that meet the definition of human subjects research. The IRB has members from across the university, including faculty, staff, and students. One member of the board is always unaffiliated with the university and represents the community's interests. What projects must be approved by the IRB? All projects that meet the definition of HSR must be approved by the IRB before any project work begins, and this includes study recruitment. Of course, you can start planning your project at any time, and you will need to do so in order to submit your protocol for approval to the IRB, but you cannot begin recruiting participants to enroll in your study until you receive IRB approval. It is important to remember that projects cannot be approved retroactively. If you even think that your project might meet the definition of human subjects research, contact the Office of Research Compliance for further guidance. Get your project submitted and get the approval. Because if you go through months working on your project and you never got IRB approval, and then it turns out you should have obtained IRB approval, we cannot approve you retroactively, and you will not be able to use any of the data collected. If after watching this video, you have determined that your research does qualify as human subjects research and therefore needs IRB approval, please watch the next video in this series where we will discuss navigating IRB review and approval.